Let's go across to our guest joining us. Professor Eugene K is Head of International Law Department, Kohelet Policy Forum, joining us from Jerusalem. Dr. Azrael Bermon is Senior Researcher, Institute of International Relations, Prague, joining us from Jerusalem. Professor Madhav Nalapat is Geopolitical Analyst in India. And Irina Tsukerman, Geopolitical Analyst, is also joining us from Washington. Irina, why don't I start with you? I do thank all of our guests for making their time. Just the sheer brutality of what we have witnessed in Israel as part of these Hamas attacks. Do you think that it has really turned the tide as far as support for Israel is concerned in this fight at this very crucial hour, and has also evaporated some of the support for the Palestine movement, given that the Palestine government till today hasn't really distanced itself from Hamas?
Thank you so much for inviting me and for bringing up this very important topic. I think it's too early to celebrate the turning of the tide. A number of countries have actually blamed Israel for this horrific tragedy, and not just other countries. We have also seen that coming from the top level academia in the United States, like the president of Princeton University, that produces the elites who then take place in governments and corporations all over the country and who influence public opinion. There is a heated debate on the left about the support for Israel. It's positive that there are many voices speaking out in support, that they are distancing themselves from those voices who are riling up, inciting anti-Semitic, anti-Israeli sentiments. But the fact that this is even an issue of debate is deeply concerning. And the mass pro-Hamas demonstrations all over the United States and Europe are likewise horrifying, because it means there are pockets of support for Hamas affiliated networks and sympathizers in the middle of Western societies. So while so far the Western countries have condemned Hamas, there's also been a pressure to de-escalate, even as Israel continued to fight Hamas still on its own territories. There were already calls to de-escalate, and there are calls to de-escalate even now when the military...
Yes, it's very shocking. Actually, Irina, I'm very glad you brought that up. There are some words we've heard, and they all sound very nice in international relations. I can even give it to some people that it comes from the right place. But you know, words like de-escalation or a proportionate response. Some bodies have come out and said Israel's response should be proportionate. Now, I don't understand, how do you decide proportionality here? What is the proportionality to kids being butchered and, as some reports suggest, unconfirmed, beheaded in front of their families?
Proportionality in wartime refers to taking measures that are appropriate, the minimum needed to achieve a military goal. Essentially, it's an idea that you don't need to overdo it, just do as much as needed to be done, avoid excessive brutality, excessive force. Nothing that Israel has done can be under the definition considered excessive. They have issued multiple warnings to civilians in Gaza to evacuate. They have called on civilians to be removed to avoid civilian casualties, and for as long as they could engage in surgical strikes to target particular terrorists, which became increasingly difficult over time. I think it's absurd to push Israel to stop military actions, because Hamas is using its entire population as human shields, as it has. That is what allows Hamas to get away with these horrific crimes, and no one, neither the United States nor any other country, would have held back if they were in the same situation, which is, I think it's ridiculous to hold Israel to a different standard.
Professor Eugene, are you disappointed that, as Irina was mentioning, the academia, the people who claim to fight the most for liberal causes, for human rights, they are the ones that have come out and almost in some cases unilaterally supported Hamas over Israel?
Two kinds of very disturbing responses. In academia, lots of professors, lots of universities are saying Israel is to blame for these horrible atrocities committed against itself. That this is just what else would you expect people to do? And even more disturbingly now, the head of the Secretary General of the United Nations, the President of the European Union, have already said that Israel should not be allowed to fight Hamas in a way to allow them to win. Israel has declared a closure of the Gaza Strip. They're not letting anybody or anything in or out. And they said, no, you have to give them electricity. You have to give them food. There's no army in the history of warfare that's been required to feed their enemy. Now, Israel is not trying to punish the civilians of Gaza, the innocents. They're trying to defeat Hamas. And an army fighting another force is allowed to deprive them of food, even if it does have consequences for the for the civilians. But we see in this international response, the reaction of the international community is, oh, we feel so bad about the civilians being massacred, the babies being killed, the women being raped, but you have to let it happen again. You can't win. You have to leave this thorn in your side and this sword hanging perpetually over the head of your people. After the Holocaust, the international community has said never again.
Yes.
And now the UN, the